Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for another episode of Countercultural. Today we'll be talking about a phrase that a lot of us here in the States are familiar with, separation of church and state, and the definitions that have been assigned to it. But what does it really mean if we have been incorrectly defining it all this time? In this episode, we are going to find that out, drawn out from the evidences and writings of the founders. I'm your host, Alex, and this is Countercultural.
In this world, truth is subjective, facts are opinionated, and the culture manipulates authenticity to its own purposes. On this podcast, our mission is to provide the answers, knowledge, and the truth guided on the basis of God's Word about the political, economical, historical, and Christian space that we live in every day. Welcome to Countercultural.
So, what do we mean by separation of church and state? That phrase has carried an immense amount of gray area with it during the course of the entirety of this country's history. So, a lot of people think separation of church and state means separation of church and big government. But really, it's simple because it's in the phrase. Separation of church and state. Let's review the First Amendment to the Constitution, really. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So really, that clause is explicitly stating Congress shall make no law. Congress is capital G government. So where are people getting big G government when they say state? Because a lot of people think that when they say separation of church and state, they mean separation of church and federal government. So really, Congress is not allowed to interfere or prohibit or be partial to any religion or establishment of the free exercise of it. But it is the state. It's explained in Amendment 10, really. Amendment 10 is the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. Powers not delegated. Whatever isn't specified in the Constitution is set to the states. So we already know that Congress cannot make a law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof. Congress can't do that. The state can have a say in this. Continuing on, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, is reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. So separation of church and state. Congress, big G government, cannot have any partisanship towards religion. But the states and the people which reside in it can. Take, for instance, Amendment 16 of the Virginia Constitution, which is where I reside. That religion, quote, or the duty which we owe to our Creator, capital C Creator, and the manner of discharging it can be directed by reason and conviction, not by force or violence, and therefore all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience, and that it is the mutual duty of all to practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. End quote. And if we were to go through all 50 states' constitutions, we would find some similar amendments, clauses along these lines, especially ones whose constitution for their state was part of the original 13 states. We'll see a lot of this mention of Christian values, religious adherence to morality. A lot of that is put into the original 13 states' constitutions because they were written and implemented during the time of the convening of all the states as they were building the nation's constitution. So a lot of them, you'll see a lot of overlapping themes in state constitutions with the U.S. Constitution. So we've got the basis of it now. The state has the final say on religion that goes on in that state, that is allowed to be exercised in that state, what parameters are around the freedom of it. So still that leaves us with a lot of unanswered questions. What specifically about the free exercise of religion is available? We don't see that we don't see very many of those specific examples in the government documents. You can read the U.S. Constitution, not find a lot of specifics really outside of Amendment 1 and 10 on this matter. You can go to your state constitution, read the amendments and clauses pertaining to this, but still it can leave a lot of unanswered questions about what is, quote, religion defined in a state, what is allowed, what really is the, quote, free exercise thereof. Are there limits to the free exercise of religion? Are there qualifications to define a religion in a said state? So let's look at a few examples from writings of past founders outside of the constitutional conventions by some of the writers and members of that convention. First is the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom by Thomas Jefferson. Quote, "We, the General Assembly of Virginia, do enact that no man shall be compelled," and I think that also carries with the implication, "nor prohibited," as stated in the First Amendment of the Constitution. No man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious place, any religious worship, ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burdened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men should be free to profess and by argument maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. So let's take those few lines from that letter by Thomas Jefferson. Let's break that down a little bit. So obviously he's stating at the very beginning, no man shall be compelled to frequent or support religious practice, worship, ministry by the government and by his state. That's reinforced in the First Amendment of the Constitution. The freedom to have choice in what, if you do partake in religion, what religion you partake in, you have that freedom to choose where you assemble and what ministry involved with that religion entails. You are free to participate and enjoy without any cost, nor can you be restrained in bodily. So you cannot be physically restrained from attending worship, from attending religious meetings, etc., on account of your religious opinions, nor your goods. The words are, nor shall be burdened, restrained, enforced in his body or goods. So goods could carry the implications of your business. If you have a business and you have certain religious beliefs, you cannot be persecuted or forced by the government to do business a certain way because you hold certain religious beliefs. You have the freedom in that business to run your business as you see fit and is with accordance to the regulations of commerce in that state. But your business shouldn't suffer because of your religious beliefs. Continuing on to break it down, all men should be free to profess and by argument maintain opinions in matters of religion. And you have the freedom to give a reason why you have this faith. You have a freedom to profess it. You have a freedom to have your opinions in certain matters based on your religion. And also, as he ends that sentence, and the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. So really, as I'm trying to read this here, it's hard to tell if it's the state shall not diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities, or it shall be the individual based upon their religious beliefs diminish civil capacities, enlarge civil capacities, or affect them for one way or another. How I see it is like the state shall not diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities to exercise their freedom of religion. But this is all with a grain of salt, and it's contingent upon 7 lines prior in this letter. Jefferson says that it is time enough for the rightful purposes of civil government for its officers to interfere. So what he's talking about here, in certain times and certain circumstances, it is the right of the civil government and those who carry out the law to interfere. Continuing, they can interfere when principles of that religion break out into overt acts against peace and good order. So peace and good order are compromised through the exercise of someone's religion. Peace and good order in commonwealth, the society, the community, if those two are compromised because of certain principles of a certain religion, that's when government can interfere and put a stop to it. That is the only instances in which government interferes in church or religious occurrences or religious worship activities and ministry, when it is contrary to the good of the people, when it is contrary to the health of the community. Another example of the founders breaking this down to detail outside of the official documents tied to our country, you have George Washington's letter to the Hebrew congregation. Quote, "For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance." So already in this line, Washington is stating that the government should not be bigoted towards any religion and shouldn't assist in the persecution of a said religion. But he continues on, bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens, in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. So Washington's making it clear, you are free to exercise your religion. Big government should not interfere. And it should not assist in persecution or discrimination against a religion under the premises that you are a upstanding, good citizen, as he puts it, and that carries that you are law-abiding, peaceful, and that you, on all occasions, give it their effectual support, carry out your duties as a citizen. Another important line from that letter, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. Now, this is a really good line towards the end of this letter. What he's explaining here is everyone sitting in safety under his own vine and fig tree is people should sit in the comfort and enjoy the freedom of religion in their capacity and have nothing to fear of that being compromised, whether that's from government, whether that's from the community, whether that's from a religion that is heavily opposed to what you believe. There shall be no fear that you should be able to exercise your freedom of religion, so long as you are a good citizen, as he puts it, upholding the law, just everything that comes with being an American citizen. So he also goes into detail about the importance of religion and, in broader terms, morality in the nation in his farewell address. Of all, quote, the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. This is Washington saying that religion and morality are indispensable supports of political prosperity. He continues on, in vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and cherish them. Obviously, talking about religion and morality. So it's not just free exercise of religion is constitutionally guaranteed, it is religion and morality encouraged to flourish and have a hold on the nation, is what Washington is emphasizing here. He puts religion and morality, these two, as the main pillars of political prosperity. There can be no successful long-term nation without these two pillars. He even says, in vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism if he tries to subvert these great pillars. Patriotism is in vain if there is no religion and morality tied to it, because then it becomes nationalism. It becomes, the word's escaping me, but I don't want to say zealots, but still, it's like rash, violent support. If those two pillars aren't in place, it becomes more of a perverted support of your country, if that makes sense. We might have to revisit this at some point because I'm butchering it, but still, you kind of get what I'm leaning on or what I'm leaning into and what Washington's trying to explain here. Another one is Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist Association shortly after he became the president of the Danbury Baptist Association. I was pretty familiar with his stance on religion, as he was a key writer of the Declaration of Independence and had a hand in the writing of the Constitution. I believe at that time the Danbury Baptist Association was, I guess we could say, under persecution. I want to say it was Maine. It was either Maine or Massachusetts, one of those far north New England states. But Anglicanism had been suppressed in that state. And this is Jefferson's response to their appeal to him. Quote, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should, quote, make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof. So he quotes that line from the First Amendment. So he's reiterating and reemphasizing the capital G government legislature cannot interfere in a matter such as this. And thus he goes on, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. And this letter is where we get separation of church and state from. So obviously that term, that phrase, separation of church and state, has meant a lot of different things to a bunch of different people and how they define it. But if you read this letter, you see what Jefferson is once again reiterating is that capital G government cannot interfere in state religious matters because it's a state religious thing, not a religious big G government thing. It's church and little g government thing. I'm looking here at my notes and I realize it's in Connecticut. My fault. Jefferson writes to them saying that this is something that you need to push for to get resolved in-house. This is something that needs to happen across the state. You need to redo or at least have your constituents, no, not your constituents, your representatives vie for amending this part of your state's constitution, which suppresses Anglicanism, so that you can have this religious freedom. This is something that you can persuade for This is something that you put forward to the community in that state to be changed in your constitution. This isn't something that the legislature of the federal government can interfere with, because the First Amendment prohibits federal government from interfering in religious matters unless it becomes a violation of the peace, good order, and the overall good of society. And eventually they did, a couple years later, get the state legislature to amend that part of their constitution, and Anglicans were free to exercise their denomination of Christianity. And that's something that we really need to be reminded of now, because that's how we should be resolving religious conflict and religious attack from the culture, and also from the small g government as a whole. It's not something that can be federally changed. It's something that we need to change our attention to state, little g government. We get, especially in the postmodern age, it's always a lot of attention is focused on the federal government to get the things done. And very much little attention is put on small g government actions and legislation, which is where it really matters. That's where it really affects us the most. The state law, state policies is what affects us where we at the most. We can't just send up a prayer to Congress or to the president and expect this to be something that's resolved top down. It needs to be resolved in the middle, really, where we often overlook, which is the state government, state legislation, our state representatives. This is something that we put forward to them and implore that they change. We've really lost that sight. And that's something that the modern left has fed off of, us being so focused on federal government that we overlook that it's state government which really affects so much of the freedoms that are guaranteed or put into the Constitution that government is supposed to secure. And another source is James Madison's On Property. Quote, he, man, the citizen, the individual, the constituent, has a property value in his religious opinions and in the profession and practice dictated by them. So Madison emphasizes not only do we have a right to property, like physical property, land, house, possessions, we also have a right to property value in our religious opinions. A lot of what he emphasizes in this article that he wrote is we have a right to the property of our conscience. That is something that we have a right to keep and to exercise. We are free to exercise the property of our mind and the religious opinions and matters that form that form our contribution to the society as a whole. We have that freedom to that it cannot be violated. So, what does this all mean? Unpacking this, what are we gleaning from this? Well, if we look at where we are now, in light of all these articles and writings of some of the founders, we can see a predominant weighted attack on the conscious. If we just start with Madison's quote, we are attacked for our religious opinions. Our conscience is attacked because of the religious opinions and religious practices that form our ideas, ideals, beliefs, our view on how society should be, how we interact with the community, and the modern left has attacked the property of conscience and has deemed it, quite honestly, we could go down the list of things that they call it: racist, bigoted, prejudiced, sexist. You just keep going. Toxic. There's so many things that they have called it, that they have called our moral stance, our religious groundings, and what they have been fighting for and implementing for so long has been the pushing forward of unconsciousness, or really consciousness raising, of being conscious of our racism, bigotry, toxicity, our sexism, all the isms, being conscious of that and suppressing our religious opinions and moral values in favor of supporting these things that we know are wrong. And they have attacked that right to property, the right to our religious opinions. That forms how we live. Also, if we want to go into the aspect of exercise of religion, radical Islam is at the top of the list. What we have allowed into this country in the past 2 decades really has been just allowing a religion, really. I'm not saying that every individual or people from that area of the world hold to that belief, but it's definitely something predominant with those who come here and they still hold to that very piously. If we look at what the founders thought, how the free exercise of religion is carried out and the qualifications and rights that are carried with it, radical Islam would have no place in this country. There would be no permanence. There would be no entry into this country if they knew and saw what this faith practice taught. And anyone who knows radical Islam knows it's death to the infidel. And the United States as a whole is, as regarded in that faith, the great Satan, the apostate, the ultimate infidel. And it is the persecution and death to all who support it and inhabit this country is the only way to try to find true meaning and in their religion, because radical Islam teaches and gives promises to higher elevation and more possessions and vices in the afterlife if they commit these acts of violence and incite crimes that are contrary to our law but essential to their religion. We have in this country rights to religious liberty as long as you uphold your social duties, and your social duties involve obeying the law. And the law says you cannot murder. So radical Islam is automatically ruled out. Radical Islam violates social duty. It violates law. So no, Islam cannot have free exercise here if that is the ultimate end to that. No one has a right to use freedom of religion, really, as an excuse to incite murder, violence, to steal. You just go down the list of things that are in our law that are violated on account of somebody's religion or somebody's exercise of it. it's very clear the consequences of that. Free exercise does not mean free dominion or freedom of religion over the law. It's freedom of religion respective to the law. That is what that carries. And so really the modern left has really flip-flopped. They have been in absolute support of radical Islam, the elevation of non-Western culture, especially Islam and those from Muslim countries. And it has been the suppression and, I don't know if I can even say this, quiet persecution of Christianity, really. So that's something that has really absolutely 180'd those who are on one side of the fence absolutely support the violence, the criminality, and violation of the laws that comes with Islam, and they abhor and want to eradicate, essentially, at some point, Christianity, which is in total alignment with the founders' view, which is coherent with upholding the nation's laws and states' laws thereof, and promoting peace and stability in the thriving of this country. So you can see the end goal of what the modern left is trying to do, even from the religious exalting of Islam right now, their preference to it, their praising of it. Anyone can see what that leads to. So where does that leave us? What is it that we can do? And my offering is really just we need to be involved. The community needs to wake up and pay attention to the fact that federal government cannot come in and save the day. It's the state government where it matters. We want the security of our rights in the Constitution. It starts with the state and it ends with the state. Amendment 1 and Amendment 10 are completely clear on that. Federal government cannot establish a religion nor prohibit free exercise. Power not reserved to the Constitution is reserved to the states respectively and to the people. States and the people. The people in those states. It is our responsibility to maintain the security of our constitutional rights by holding our state representatives accountable, sending in emails, reminding them by making calls. Hey, we want to see this happen. Hey, we feel like this is being really pushed down our throats and we don't want that. This looks like it's trying to get suppressed, but this is a constitutional right, and we do not agree with the policy that's being put in place by the current administration. It is the initiative of the people of the states that preserves the security of our rights. It is not us sitting back and somewhat lazily expecting the federal government to fix everything. We can't wait around expecting something to get cleaned up and fixed by something that can't intervene. And so it's this standstill. It's people aren't doing anything. Federal government can't do anything. So then state legislation and policy will thrive with whatever gets put forward because the people are so occupied with the federal government trying to fix it and federal government not being able to fix it. And so that's just something that really needs to be reemphasized. People need to be involved again. in the formation of government, because we are the ones, for the time being, who hold the power to make change. And a lot of people could say we've lost that power, but we haven't lost that yet. We can still have a say. It's just that everybody has to get on the same train and move it forward. Everybody's got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to have the interactiveness and the drive and the patriotism to do it. Just going back up to what Washington said in his farewell address. Religion and morality are indispensable supports. You lose those two, you can't claim patriotism. So the question I want to ask us is, if you don't have those two, what kind of patriot are you? What definition follows from your patriotism? Is it the one that the founders had in mind? Or is it a twisted, altered patriotism that sort of stands in the back and says, yes, I'm all for America. I'm all for security of constitutional rights and our freedoms, but you don't want to put the work in. We're all talk, but no walk in our involvement. We talk of involvement, we talk of change, we talk of security, but we're not actively pursuing the concreteness of it, the stability of it. So as we approach our country's 250th, self-reflection is key right now. What did the founders have in mind? What would they say about where we are now? What would their voice and idea be of how we should continue to maintain our liberty? And the foundations and pillars of religion and morality need to be maintained, need to stand. Because those are the two right now that are being knocked down slowly, that are being contorted into something else. Those who are opposed to our country and what it was founded on are trying to twist those pillars and redefine them into something that is anti-freedom, anti-liberty. And that's something that we need to wake up to, and that we need to preserve these pillars. And that means holding our state governments accountable. So that's just something that I just want to touch on in this episode. We might delve into this later, go into more detail, go into some more documents and writings of the founders, just to get more of their thoughts on religious liberty and the free exercise within state government and within federal government, what the laws say can and cannot be practiced. So if you enjoyed today's episode, hit a like. If you want to get more notifications for episodes from the podcast, or if you enjoyed stuff like this, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you got a question or you got a thought, email us at the counterculturalpodcast@gmail.com, all lowercase. Follow us on Twitter. We must take the truth into a world that does not believe it. We must choose to follow Christ and what He has commissioned us in His Word. Jesus was in this world and not of it, and so should we. Like Him, we are called to be countercultural. I'll see you guys in the next one.